Good morning. My name is Thomas Reutman. I'm a hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk for this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterwards through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's no sign-in sheet, so if you'd like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. If you do not have that with you, please contact the Bureau of Urban Forestry at urbanforestry@sfdpw.org. This public hearing is being held to consider 6 items. First is public comment, where members of the public may address the hearing officer on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Then hearing order number 211738 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement to be relocated in the unaccepted right-of-way of 50 Ludlow Avenue. Then hearing order 211739 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 632 El Camino del Mar. Then hearing order 211740 to consider the removal and replacement of 6 significant trees on private property with replacement of 4 within the St. Francis Wood adjacent to 75 San Leandro Way and other streets, which will repeat when we hear that item. Hearing order number 211741 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1687 Market Street. And lastly, hearing order 211742 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 485 Duncan Street. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you've provided contact information. Excuse me. The hearing will proceed as follows for the cases. First, I'll ask Public Works staff to speak and present the case. Then I'll allow the property owner, applicant, or appellant to speak. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. And then the department, if the department would like to address any comments. And then if I feel it's warranted, I will allow an opportunity for further clarification by the appellant. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you've dialed in by phone, raise your hand by pressing *9, and when told you are being unmuted, press *6 to unmute yourself before speaking. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. Again, if you'd like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak, and then you'll have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I'll ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to address matters that are within the department's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda?
I see no hands at this time, Mr. Reutman.
Thank you. Then we'll start with the first case. It's hearing order number 211738 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement to be relocated in the unaccepted right-of-way of 50 Ludlow Avenue. Staff has approved the removals and the public has protested. May I have the department make its presentation?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Chris Buck, and I am the urban forester for the Bureau of Urban Forestry within San Francisco Public Works. And for each of the cases this morning, I'll be presenting a number of photos and other information in a PowerPoint and kind of work through those slides and narrate as I go along. So just wanted to say good morning to everyone on camera here before I moved to the PowerPoint. So just a moment and we will get over to the share. And doesn't quite look right. Last sec. And just confirming with our clerk that the PowerPoint is full screen.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So just broadly, before we dive into our first case, Public Works and the Bureau of Urban Forestry, we have a number of goals and strategic objectives. And one of them is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure in public rights-of-way. And our Bureau's mission is to preserve and grow the urban forest while balancing the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. Below are examples of upper left, tree maintenance or removal of a large tree. Upper right is tree protection being installed so that existing trees are protected during construction. Bottom left, planting new trees and replacement trees. And then bottom right is just showing that there's a number of unique public rights-of-way in the city, and sometimes there are trees within our jurisdiction that are not physically in a sidewalk yet remain in our jurisdiction. So as of July 1st, 2017, Public Works became responsible for maintaining all of the street trees in San Francisco. This image is a little outdated, but we are trying to wrap up our first full complete round of maintenance of all trees in the public right-of-way. We do have an urban forestry ordinance, Article 16 of the Public Works Code, and just like every municipality, that's the urban forestry ordinance that establishes a lot of our processes. So the first item, getting into it, is Order 211738, and this is one of these sort of atypical public rights-of-way that we have in San Francisco. The removal of these 3 blue gum eucalyptus trees was initiated by Public Works staff, and during the 30-day posting period, the public protested. Regarding the required replacement trees to be planted, there are not typical street tree planting locations available in the immediate neighborhood, so we'd be looking at planting the required replacement trees as far away as Mira Loma or Portola. So these are the subject trees. We're going to go into greater detail with photos of each of the 3 trees, but they are blue gum eucalyptus trees. The Latin or scientific name is Eucalyptus globulus, and this is showing them. They're located on a very steep slope. And I just want to provide some context to this site because it's a little unusual. Ludlow Alley is a public right-of-way shown in white, and it's only 10 feet wide. And it basically exists to provide a sewer connection from the uphill slope on Casitas Ave down to Dalewood Road and Ardenwood that's downslope. So there's a 10-foot public right-of-way that was carved out when the neighborhood was constructed that exists really for one purpose, which is to allow the sewer line to run down with the grade. The trees are numbered 1, 2, 3 in this location. So we're going to be going through photos of each tree in that way. Again, just pointing out how this is established. There are key maps or monument maps, grade maps that establish the official width of a public right-of-way. And there's nothing on site that gives you a lot of guidance beyond the sewer covers, and I'll show you what that means. So circled in light purple is the sewer cover in the center of the image. And our public right-of-way, a sewer cover is typically in the center of a public right-of-way. So we measure out 5 feet from each side of that to establish the 10-foot public right-of-way. One thing that's unusual about Ludlow is that it's not accessible from an accessibility standards. There's no accessibility to it. It's a very steep public right-of-way. There's no stairs. There's no walkway to get to it. You can hop these low retaining walls and start trekking up there. It's very steep. On the uphill side, and so this image is the downhill side of that, and our subject trees are in the top of the image, kind of in shadow there. On the uphill side of Ludlow, this is what it looks like as well. It's even more inaccessible. There's this little low fence that the property owners have put across that. To get down there, you hop over the fence and then kind of squirrel your way down there. It's like an 8-foot drop, and then you're finally below, you're about 8 feet below grade, and then you start the trek downhill. You can see there's 2 drains in this road on Casitas, and those gather all that water, all that runoff, and then it goes down this big plunge down to the street below. So just trying to show how challenging the access is to this, and apologies to the property owners who tried for probably over a year to get us to get on the site physically to inspect the trees. So just getting into the specifics of the 3 trees, all 3 eucalyptus are showing signs of decline and low vigor in the canopy. How we can tell is if you look at those branch tips, you can see sections, a lot of sections of the canopy that shows dead branches and dead twigs. Typically, a healthy tree would not have any of that dieback visible. And so each of the 3 trees show signs of this decline, low vigor. Of greater importance, well, we'll get to the greater importance, what's occurring at the lower trunks. But again, just showing the upper canopies of the 3 trees, showing low vigor. And that's something that's happening to a lot of blue gum eucalyptus trees in the Bay Area. We do believe it's related to drought, some of our cycles of drought, which causes root retrenchment. And even when it starts raining a few years later, where the water precipitation becomes a little bit more average, it doesn't have the same amount of root mass to absorb all that additional water. And so that's why we're not seeing them just like spring right back out like a spider plant or something. The other challenge for managing these 3 trees in this location are the multiple stems that have formed the base of each of the trees where they originate from the soil grade. They also have ivy on them. So these trees obviously intercept fog. And when they do that, there's precipitation practically year round. And all that precipitation gathers in the unions where the main stems join. And so there's an unknown amount of structural deficiencies located in the base of each of the 3 trees. So each of the trees has multiple stems. This is at tree 1, and getting inside that ivy growth, you can see that it's not just 1 trunk, but in many cases it's as many as 8 trunks. And where they join with each other is where we have concerns about potential large stem failures. When trees fail, it's difficult to predict when they may fail. But when we look at storm response and other tree failures citywide and as an industry internationally, you can often, there's no surprise where a tree may fail. It won't fail in the middle of the trunk among sound wood, but it may fail where it structurally has a weak point. And so these three trees all have multiple stems, codominant stems, some with included bark. And those are structural weaknesses within the trees. Again, just showing some establishing photos of each of the trees and the multi-stems that have formed. Again, this is tree one that's at the top of the grade of the three trees. I want to point out in the background to the left, there's a native coast live oak tree. To the left, there are a couple of redwoods and a couple of coast live oak trees that would remain and be more sustainable for the site. Moving on to our next tree. Yep, so we looked at tree one, we looked at tree two, and now we're looking at tree three, which is the tree lowest on the grade. And you can see again, branch dieback and overall lack of healthy vigor. The tree should be much fuller with a lot of green leaves and no dieback on the branches. I do want to note that of the three trees, this one is the closest to the house below in this image. It really towers over the house quite a bit. All three of them, you know, if they were to fail near the base of the trunks, would have no doubt potentially strike any of the houses either uphill or below hill. Again, showing the decreased vigor in the upper canopy. The ivy is not great for any trees. It cuts off gaseous exchange with the bark. But removing this ivy will not increase the health of the trees. So that's not under consideration. This is a little pulled back to try to show the overall site conditions of tree three. There is a little bit of a lean out over the backyard of the house below. And again, showing the multiple stems and decreased vigor. So all of these three trees are very, very large, and in that sense are securing carbon and provide biomass. Due to the decreased vigor and the multiple stems, these are trees that are very, very difficult for public works to maintain in this hard to access, narrow public right of way. I did not reach out to the PUC, but I have to imagine that the PUC, the Public Utility Commission, has opinions about having three large eucalyptus trees located on top of their sewer line. I'm just throwing it out there that if one of these trees failed and damaged the sewer line, all that water that's gathered on the street above would come pouring through here, and that could create some major problems for the grade and the slope above the houses. That said, I don't want to go to dramatics. We're just looking at tree health, and we see three very large trees, multiple stems, and decreased vigor. And so for this one, even though the trees are just huge in that, amazing in that regard, they're no longer healthy and sustainable for public works to maintain. So we initiated the removal of the three trees. Replacement trees is required whenever a tree is removed. We would not replace these trees in this public right of way. We can't safely access it, so we won't be sending gardeners up the hillside to plant trees. What our code requires is that we then identify closest available planting sites in the public right of way. But because of the land use pattern in this neighborhood, we're probably looking at Miraloma Drive, which is on the far left in this image, or to the north above the top of this image would be Portola as our location for replacement trees. So thank you for your patience, but I just wanted to explain the basis of our staff level approval and that to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases, the staff decision was to approve the 3 trees. Thank you. And then just to clarify, there's no applicant in this case. Public Works is the initiator of this tree removal. So we don't have an applicant or necessarily like I think we would just move on to public comment. In this case, there's no like appellant.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anyone present from the public to appeal this tree removal? Looks like there's a hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you state
Hi.
your name, your full name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Cheryl Gay, and I am actually one of the neighbors adjacent to the alley. And I am actually in support, 100% in support of the tree removal, as our home would be in the path of danger for many of the reasons that Mr. Buck has presented. He has been very helpful in helping us assess the situation of these trees. And the 3 most concerning reasons that we, myself and several of my neighbors have, are the following. The first is, as Mr. Buck stated, the risk of damaging the adjacent sewer, which could send water into our properties as well as cost taxpayer money to repair it. The major risk that we're concerned about for our particular home and property is the risk of a falling tree. If it were to fall on our home, it would fall directly onto my 3 children's bedrooms, which, as you can imagine, is of deep concern to us. And given the fact that these are eucalyptus trees, the third concern that we have is the potential for fire risk of these trees, given that they have quite an oily substance. So in summary, we'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Buck and his team, and that we're fully supportive of his proposal to remove the trees.
Thank you. Do you mind telling us your address so that we can mark it to the location?
17 Lansdale.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to either voice support or appeal the removal from the public?
I see no other hands, Mr. Reutemann.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll close that order and move to order 211739 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 632 El Camino del Mar. Staff has approved the removals and the public has protested. Chris, you can make your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Buck again with Bureau of Urban Forestry, and we're going to pull that PowerPoint right back up where we left off. So, and current slide. And just confirming we're back to our next item on the screen.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you for introducing this item. So this is an application. In this particular case, Public Works received a tree removal application from the adjacent property owner to remove 3 street trees from the public right-of-way. This is a little bit more straightforward in that the trees are visually accessible, physically accessible right here in the sidewalk, adjacent to the property. The permit application that is covering this topic is 798737. And when an application is submitted by a property owner, you know, we have reasons for removal. We ask them to just state kind of what their thinking is, thought process, you know, where are they coming from? What are their concerns? So their concerns were that two of the three clearly were not, they have deficiencies, trunk damage and cavities. There's a third tree that in their mind seemed maybe not as problematic. Their desire, in all honesty, was to remove all three and replace all three with similar species. And that's just a starting point. You know, generally speaking, we would never approve a tree for removal simply to match, you know, a pattern, because we just can't do that. If we started allowing that, it would be really hard to be consistent and fair to the public. And we want to protect trees that are relatively healthy. So all that said, two of the three trees, without a doubt, you'll see there's a lot of deficiencies with them. But even the tree that they thought might be in better condition has deficiencies as well. So ultimately, at the staff level, we did approve all three. We reviewed their application, reviewed the trees closely, and approved all three trees for removal with replacement. And we'll go through the photos and explain why. And then the way that Public Works references street trees is with the flow of auto traffic on that side of the block, so that if you were in a maintenance vehicle, you would encounter the trees in which they're listed either in our database or on a notepad in our printout. So we're going to go through the trees the way that we would come across them if you were driving down the road. For tree one is the one in the foreground. And just overall, these trees are yucca trees, giant yucca. And they're very fibrous, so they don't do a lot of carbon sequestration at all, the way that a woody tree does. So already there's some, even though these, if you look at super old photos of San Francisco, you can see a lot of these here and there in San Francisco. Like, why is that? Well, they could deal with the wind and the fog and the salty air. So it's a tree species that was planted quite a bit. That said, they don't provide a whole lot of canopy. They're much more ornamental, and that was a factor in our agreeing to the third tree to be removed. So overall, for each of these slides, our inspector jotted down their thought process regarding why we're approving the trees. And the replacement species would be magnolia. So just pointing out some of these deficiencies, in this case, some dieback in the upper canopy that's circled, and some significant trunk injuries. In this case, the base of the trunk actually has a cavity that goes all the way through and kind of refused together, fused together, not refused. So again, a very old yucca tree with a lot of injuries to it. And just showing more of that large injury in the center of the trunk. And then looking at January 2023 to 2025, there's more landscaping in the public right of way, so it can kind of mask the fact that the trees are still not contributing a whole lot to the site. And again, this is the one that has the big cavity in the base of the trunk, mid-trunk, and then some dieback in the upper canopy. So each of the trees we evaluated, really looked at them closely. If a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, our process is to deny it for removal. But if we do feel that trees are not really healthy and sustainable anymore, then we typically would approve it. Just noting some of the deficiencies we see in the other palms, yuccas, pardon me, the yucca trees. And again, looking at just a couple of years, 2023 to 2025, the tree is still hanging in there. It's not dead. But again, there's limited growth and there's just not a lot of structure to this tree. So the owner has applied to remove all three and replace all three. This would benefit both the public and the Bureau of Urban Forestry by us not having to water once a week for 3 years, 3 trees. And so that's another factor that, in this case, why we approved it for removal. Again, some dieback in the crown, injuries to the trunks. And again, I appreciate our inspector for such a thorough review of each of the 3 trees. Just another view of some of the dieback. Again, when it's so green, it can look pretty healthy, but when you're trained to look at really overall, there's quite a bit of each of the canopies that's in poor condition. And this is tree number 3, located behind the stop sign. So it is replantable, replaceable. We'll shift off the replacement just a little bit further from the sign. But that's it. 3 yuccas, they are hanging in there, but not doing a lot for the environment overall. And so to be consistent with how we handled similar cases, our staff level decision was to approve all 3 with replacement. And we posted the trees for removal, and during the 30-day posting period, we received a protest from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Before we take any public comment, can you clarify one point about the benefit of the watering? I didn't quite catch that.
Sure. So in this case, the property owner has initiated the removal of the 3 trees, and the owner will take on the establishment. So both the replacement of the 3 trees and then watering through the 3-year establishment period. So that's a benefit to Public Works in that the owner will take on that responsibility. And then after the trees are established, meaning they no longer require supplemental water that way, the trees will revert to being the maintenance responsibility of Public Works. So to us, the removal of these 3 trees, it's a lower priority. It's not something we need to be rushing out to do, but for the property owner, it's a reasonable request for removal. So if they're pursuing it, we're open as to allowing them to remove them and replace them and establish the replacement trees. So that's how it would kind of benefit us. We can use resources in some other areas in the city.
So if the city were initiating the removal, then the city would be responsible for that establishment period.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying. Is there anyone from the public present to protest the removal of these trees?
There may be it's possible there may be an applicant or applicant representative present.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
My name is McCall Kapatolnik. I'm a landscape architect with Surface Design. We're based in San Francisco, and I'm just here on behalf of the applicant, just to talk through our reasoning. The client, the property owner has seen over the past few years some limb loss, and what limb loss means in a street tree really is a danger to people walking or parking in this neighborhood, and so that's in part why they brought in an arborist to look at the health of the trees and see whether they were salvageable to kind of mitigate limb loss as they move forward. And the arborist report, which was submitted to the Department of Urban Forestry with the application, indicated that as Mr. Buck noted, 2 of the 3 trees are really in poor condition and will likely continue to have limb loss over time, and the 3rd one is in fair but not good condition, and in part it's really to your point, Mr. Buck, these are old trees and they're trees with a lifespan, and it appears that these trees are at the end of their lifespan. So the property owner looked at the adjacent streetscape trees that are doing really well and providing shade and canopy and carbon sequestration, and also giving shade so that the understory planting that is also benefiting the public doesn't require as much water because it's in the shade and canopy of the trees. And that's why they suggested the magnolia, which are as you move down the street, those are the adjacent street trees. So just wanted to talk through kind of the rationale and the process of how we got here. We appreciate the Department of Public Works and Urban Forestry's thoughtful assessment of each tree, and thanks for giving us time today to talk through our rationale as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kapitulnik. Is that how I say it?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Appreciate your insight. And you mentioned the arborist report that was submitted to the Bureau.
Yeah, so Urban Tree Management, we had them do a report and come out and assess the trees, and that was submitted as part of the removal and replacement application. So in addition to the Department of Urban Forestry's assessment, a third-party arborist also assessed the health of all 3 of these trees, and that was part of the application.
Thank you. I guess if I can get a copy of that, I can get that from the Bureau. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone here to protest or provide additional support for this removal?
I see no other hands.
Okay. Thank you. Then we can move on to hearing order number 211740. Consider the removal and replacement of 6 significant trees on private property with replacement of 4 within St. Francis Wood, adjacent to 75 San Leandro Way, 37 Santa Monica Way, 190 San Pablo Avenue, 80 Santa Clara Avenue, 98 Santa Clara Avenue, and 65 Terrace Drive. The trees at 37 Santa Monica Way and 190 San Pablo Avenue cannot be replaced. Staff approved the removals and the public protested. We'll let Chris make his presentation now.
Thank you, and confirming that the PowerPoint is back up.
Yes, it is.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So thank you for introducing the specifics of this particular case, order 211740. And the subject trees are within a neighborhood known as St. Francis Wood. And something I just want to point out is I didn't create a diagram, but the city's jurisdiction in this neighborhood is limited to curb to curb. So what appear to be street trees, trees planted in a public right of way adjacent to the property, and you can see an example here on the screen, essentially along the planting strip between the sidewalk and curb. St. Francis Wood has one of the most unique jurisdictions in the city, in that through various covenants and the establishment of the neighborhood, city jurisdiction is limited curb to curb. What that means is, however, that in 2007, our ordinance was amended and we had the creation of a new tree jurisdiction referred to as significant trees. Public Works does have jurisdiction over significant trees that are on private property, but within a 10-foot public right of way. It's a really unusual thing to see. And if anyone listening actually had questions, follow-up questions about it, I could always mail them or email them additional information about it. I meant to pull up a diagram to show what we're talking about, but these trees look like they're street trees planted in the public right of way, and in many ways they are, but jurisdictionally they're technically trees that are all being maintained by St. Francis Wood through their own HOA management approach. But they do qualify as significant trees because they're within 10 feet of where we have jurisdiction. And so they'll appear very much like street trees, and folks may wonder, well, why isn't Public Works, why don't we maintain these trees? And the answer is that they're technically only within our jurisdiction for permitting. They're not within our maintenance jurisdiction. And so with that, I'm going to dive into the specific locations. These trees were evaluated by Susan Nawberry and myself, and we also walk a lot of the blocks in St. Francis Wood, both with their HOA manager, and their third-party arborist. And so what we do is actually look at trees that we might approve for removal and review them in person. So with that, the first location is 75 San Leandro Way. It's a red flowering gum, also known as Corymbia thicifolia. Some details you can see here. It's a tall tree. Now, the primary concern for us on this one is that roots were pruned for repairs over the years repeatedly. So not like in the last year, not in the last 10 years, but over the last 20 to 30 years, there has been root pruning, repeated root pruning of the tree's root system. And after a while, that can lead to decay getting established in the base of a tree's trunk. This tree also has a low live crown ratio. What Susan is showing in this image is that the green living canopy of this tree is really in the high top part of the tree. Trees that lack a more established, like 50% or more live crown ratio, have more leaves and foliage to absorb the energy of wind and prevents trees from failing. So this is almost acting like a sort of a tall lever arm, where when the wind hits the tree high up in the canopy like that, the tree is not able to dissipate energy throughout the rest of the trunk. And so she's noting that it's not a great condition to have. But our primary concern is the lack of compartmentalization of these old injuries and where decay is setting in. There's also a lean on the opposite side of where the root pruning has occurred. So the root pruning occurred on the tension side. And again, that is a potential concern for us. So for this particular tree, we felt that St. Francis would apply and remove this one particular tree on this block was a reasonable initiative at this time that we reviewed closely. So we do support removal of this tree with replacement. The next tree is, I'll spend a lot less time talking about because it's dead. And this is a Brisbane box tree. And now this tree cannot be replaced because of the proximity to the trees to the left and the right of it. So it's almost like it's already been replaced because we have these two trees right here. So we're saying it's not being replaced, but it really is being replaced. It's being replaced by the trees that are on either side of it. So it can't be replaced due to spacing. When we space trees, lay them out, we plan for their mature size, not their size when they're really tiny and it looks like you could cram a bunch in. And these trees will get very large over time. So we do need those trees on the left and the right in this image to have that space to get much larger. So technically, I do consider this a replacement. It's just that the replacement are to the side. Just showing that there's limited space to put a tree right back in this exact location. Those trees on the left and the right will quickly fill the space in. Tree is dead. Thank you, Susan, for clarifying that. And yes. So moving on to the next site is 190 San Pablo Ave. This is also a red flowering gum, Corymbia thicifolia, large tree, but you can really see there's problems here. Where's the center of the canopy? It's been pruned out. This tree has experienced failures over the years, and sometimes trees won't completely fail, parts of a tree will fail. Property managers try to retain the tree as long as they could and work with what they had to work with, but at this point in time, there's enough issues with what remains of the original tree that removal is recommended. This limb is unstable due to low taper, meaning it's very long and extended without a lot of larger trunk taper. So it's exposed quite a bit. Again, this is one of those lever arms that in high winds structurally would fail. And this one, we're pointing out also the proximity to the stop sign. We need 25 feet of clearance so we don't typically plant a replacement tree within 25 feet of the approach of a stop sign, which is considered a traffic signal. So this tree site would not be replanted right here because of the proximity to the stop sign. Just showing previous branch failures, large branch failures, and again, very reasonable to initiate the removal of this tree at this time. The next tree is a blue gum eucalyptus, Eucalyptus globulus, and it's this tree here in this photo. You can actually look, it's a bit unusual. We've all enjoyed this tree with just how large the trunk is. But you can also note there's reverse trunk taper, meaning typically a tree's structure will get wider at the base, not reverse. Now, why is that? Well, it could mean that there's some trunk wood injuries that are producing wood at a faster rate, higher up in the trunk. Overall, we believe there's internal decay, which is causing that swelling. It's reaction wood that's growing around decay. But the fact that it has reverse trunk taper does increase the likelihood of a lower trunk failure. Here's a closer look at the tree. We've been working closely with St. Francis Wood on pruning practices. A number of years ago, almost 10 years ago now, there were a slightly different contractor with a different crew who prune trees rather excessively. We've worked through that, fines were issued, but really it was an educational opportunity to just discover that we actually do have jurisdiction over the trees. We had not been involved with tree jurisdiction prior to about 10 years before. So that was news to the managers at St. Francis Wood. But this, just showing this tree, the conditions around it at the base of the trunk, reverse trunk taper, and we believe there's a significant amount of decay present in the main trunk. That's problematic because all these very large, heavy limbs attach above those points of decay. So we're concerned structurally. We believe this is a reasonable tree to remove at this time. And this site is replantable. The next tree is a slightly different species of eucalyptus. There's over 300 different eucalyptus tree species. This is Eucalyptus gunnii, cider gum. That's a new one for me. Very tall, vigorous growth, as you can see in the canopy. But the primary concern is at the base of the tree, we have uncompartmentalized basal decay. And these are close-ups of that decay. Decayed wood has no strength holding capacity. So just like an I-beam or iron or steel, there's no strength holding capacity for wood that is decayed. So if too much wood becomes decayed, we're losing that weight-bearing capacity. Just showing this is not the way that a eucalyptus typically grows with this shredded bark at the base of the trunk. This is atypical, and we believe it's from this decay that is present at the base of the trunk. You can see this is an old fruiting body that would have been white during winter months. So we know there's decay present on all sides of the lower trunk. And Susan provided an example of like the significance of decay in compartmentalizing. When humans, if we cut our skin, we refer to our skin as healing. We reform skin in the same exact place. When a tree is injured, it doesn't actually, quote unquote, heal. It'll block off or compartmentalize the part that is injured. And so in that sense, this lower trunk is full of decay And the tree does its best to wall it off with barriers of sound wood. But at a certain point, some of those walls that are preventing spread of decay break down, and it just becomes advanced. And so in this particular case, we do believe there's enough decay present to warrant removal. On the left is an example, different tree, different state, showing sound, healthy response wood that's going to slowly compartmentalize and protect the wood that remains strong inside. In this case, there's no compartmentalization. And so over time, this decay is allowed to progress further into the main trunk. This one's a little bit more straightforward. Eucalyptus polyanthemus, a silver dollar eucalyptus. It has low vigor, thinning canopy. There's a slight lean to it. This site will be replaced. It's at 65 Terrace Drive. Again, just showing some decline in that upper canopy. This actually shows quite a bit how thinned out that upper canopy has become. Oh, and that's the last of the trees for this. So again, I want to go back to the hearing announcement that said that all the trees will be replaced except for 2. I will note that one of them really is being replaced by trees that have already been planted next to it. And the tree that can't be replanted at the stop sign, St. Francis Wood has planted a number of trees recently that I think would qualify as replacement. I'll work with Inspector Nawberry to confirm that a replacement will be planted somewhere nearby. So even though it said no replacement at those 2 locations, what we're trying to let the public know is if you live at that address, that same exact site won't be replanted. But our code does require that replacements be planted nearby. It's just that those trees may not physically be in the same exact location. So a little confusing, but that's the goal of what we're trying to balance here. But yeah, with that, to be consistent with how we've handled similar removal applications in St. Francis Wood, these were reasonable trees to approve. We posted them for 30 days, and then during the 30-day notification period, the public protested. In this case, we do have an applicant because the trees will be removed and are managed by St. Francis Wood. So we'd likely call anyone here to represent St. Francis Wood first and then go to public comment.
Thank you, Chris. Take the first person that raised their hand that's part of the applicant.
I mean, there's nobody from the neighborhood.
Yes, this is Susan Rothstein. I live at 80 Santa Clara Avenue, but I am not speaking on behalf of the Homeowners Association. So if there is someone from the HOA, maybe they should go first. I don't know if there's someone.
Okay, yes, just one moment, please. Thank you.
This is Paul Hill. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. My name is Paul Hill. I am speaking on behalf of the Parks and Parkways Committee of the St. Francis Homes Association. I've been a resident of San Francisco for 48 years and a homeowner in St. Francis Wood since 1998. St. Francis Wood began as a neighborhood in October of 1912. Part of its claim to fame has been the parks and what we call parkways, the planted areas between the busy sidewalk and the street. In these areas, we have an urban forest of almost 1,500 trees. We have 7 acres of planted green space. It's been the responsibility, the mission, and the privilege of the St. Francis Homes Association to care for and maintain these trees. We have done it well. Many of our trees are more than 100 years old. We spend about 25% of our annual operating budget on maintaining our trees. We do everything that the Bureau of Urban Forestry that Chris mentioned at the beginning of his presentation. We do everything they do, but since our trees are on private property, we do all of this ourselves, or rather the professionals that we have to hire do this. So about 15 years ago, the city of San Francisco passed the significant tree ordinance. It's our understanding that this was designed to protect mature trees in people's front yards. But in our neighborhood, it instead applies to more than 500 mature trees in our parkways. So because of that, the Bureau of Urban Forestry does not have any maintenance or responsibility, just oversight. And so because of that, we started working closely with the Bureau of Urban Forestry, doing the annual walkthrough of the neighborhood to review and evaluate all and any trees that might need removal. Now, no one hates removing mature trees more than me. Over the past 20 years, I spent 8 years on the board of directors in charge of park and parkways, and during that time, I had to arrange to have many mature trees removed. But when they present a clear safety issue or an obvious or hidden health issue, we apply for permits with the Bureau of Urban Forestry. In many cases, someone has appealed the removals, and the process can take more than a year. The request for these removals being considered today was submitted on June 3rd of 2024. For an entire year, we have waited. So part of the responsibility of taking care of urban forestry is to replant it. 25 years ago, St. Francis Wood began the concerted effort to restore our parks and parkways to the way they were originally designed to be by the Olmsted brothers of Brookline, Massachusetts. We've worked with several prestigious landscaping design companies, including Royston Hanamono and more recently the Roma Collaborative, to review our plantings and make recommendations on how to proceed with our restoration project.
30 seconds.
Okay. Maintaining and improving our urban forest is a complicated and costly job managed by neighborhood volunteers and completely funded by the homeowners of St. Francis Wood. We take our responsibility very seriously. As such, we work closely with the Bureau of Urban Forestry, thanks Susan and Chris, and we have developed excellent working relationships with them and our consulting arborists, including Walter Levison and Remy Hummer. When we submit a removal request, we have done our due diligence to make sure that several arborists, not just the Bureau of Urban Forestry, agree that the tree should be removed. And within a year, we will plant new trees to replace any that are missing. I'm hoping the panel today will approve these removals and perhaps give us some advice on how we can streamline the removal process in the future. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for that detailed overview of what the HOA's responsibilities are. Maybe we'll hear Ms. Rothstein.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the Bureau of Urban Forestry. And also thank you, Paul, for your management over the years. So Susan Rothstein, 80 Santa Clara Avenue, but I'm also representing or have been asked to represent our neighbor at 98 Santa Clara, who also is very concerned about the trees. So first I want to say we absolutely love our trees. It's not that we don't love trees, but the one in front of our home is over 100 years old, and it represents a significant danger to us as well as to the public. If that tree were to fall, it would fall right on our bedroom. So unless it's a time when we're not asleep, we would be history. So we've been concerned about this tree for a number of years. And I know the arborists have been watching it very carefully, as well as our neighbors. And so we are not surprised to learn that both the arborists hired by our HOA as well as the Bureau of Urban Forestry have deemed it to be unsafe. So it's a combination of the leaning, the top heavy, the smaller base and so forth. We do feel it puts both our home and our individual safety in danger, as well as anyone who parks underneath it or anyone who walks by. And so we ask on behalf of ourselves and our neighbors that these trees be removed and replaced. And we thank you very much for your attention to all of this.
Thank you. Can you remind me which tree or which address?
Sure. The one in front of 80 Santa Clara Avenue is ours. And then our neighbor who is older and not able to join using technology. He's at 98 Santa Clara, but also the trees on the side on Terrace, that's his driveway. So even though his address is 98 Santa Clara, what impacts him are the ones on Terrace, because he's concerned when he goes in and out of his driveway that one may fall on his car.
So concerned about the one in the front.
No, I'm
Thank you.
saying 98, I said in front.
Okay, is there anyone else here to provide testimony either in support or in appeal of the removals?
No other hands, Mr. Reutemann.
Okay, then we'll move to hearing order 211741 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1687 Market Street. Staff has denied the removals and the applicant has appealed. Can, Chris, you can give your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. And thank you again to Paul Hill with St. Francis Wood and Susan for calling in and providing that additional background. Appreciate that. Yeah, let me go back to sharing our PowerPoint. Pull that up. So thanks everyone. We are working through the agenda here. I know we had a few today, but we're getting there. So this application is for the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1687 Gough.
Mr. Buck, we are not
Yeah.
seeing your screen.
You're not, okay. Let me, the one time I didn't ask, of course, you know. Pardon me, let me try that again. Oh yes, there we go. Yeah. Okay, and is it?
Okay, it's good to go. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll get into the details of this particular case. The applicant and project sponsor will tell you a little bit more about the specifics of the matter. But these are the 3 subject trees we'll be talking about. The property is at the corner of Gough and Market, and very good news is that around the corner there are a couple of large platanus trees. I don't even think our staff included photos of them. The 2 very mature trees on Market will be retained as part of this project. So I first wanted to start by saying that's great to hear and a great relief. We were just trying to protect all the trees we can on Market Street. And so these are the 3 subject trees. They're not that big, they're still kind of youngish in age. They're not at maturity yet. These are bronze loquat trees, and we'll get into some of the details, but the applicant did provide an arborist report with evaluations of the condition of the trees. And what's interesting about this case is that there are concerns about accessibility, clearance, width, and height for over the sidewalk. And so we'll talk more about that. This is the replacement tree plan. So the 3 X's on this sheet, on this screen, show where the current trees are located. And the green circles show the eventual size replacements over time, where the replacement plan would be. So this is a site that has a proposed bulb out partially along Gough Street. You can see a red dotted line that shows the current curb location and a proposed bulb out to increase the width of the sidewalk. What that does is that allows a shorter crossing distance to cross Gough for pedestrians who are walking up and down Market Street. So this is the replacement tree plan, and I'll go through each 3 of the 3 trees, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the accessibility concerns, because I feel for the applicant and that they're kind of caught between the Bureau of Urban Forestry, and of course we want to protect trees that are relatively healthy and sustainable with the feedback they've received from planners that require different types of accessibility. So the species is bronze loquat, Eriobatria deflexa. This tree has 6-inch diameter. The overall structure is good. I mean, you might say it's fair. Overall vigor is fine. It's good. Our first thought was that the trees might lack adequate clearance directly over the road. So sometimes that happens if trees aren't trained to establish a somewhat upright center trunk before they start branching out over the road. The clearance over the road actually isn't that bad. I thought that was going to be an issue, but that's less of a concern. So overall, we've evaluated the application. We believe the trees are relatively healthy and sustainable, although not very large. That construction does not warrant the removal, so they would be able to construct the building and work around the trees. And they could also be pruned to increase the clearance over the road and the sidewalk. This is a sight line down the roadway, just trying to show that the trees need slightly improved clearance over the road, but it wouldn't necessitate removal of the trees. Tree number 3, again, they're all about the same size. Vigor is good, structure we say is good. You know, again, maybe it's fair, but each of the 3 trees do have pretty similar overall structure. This middle tree, tree 2, could use improved clearance directly over the road, and that would be achieved prior to construction on the site. And tree numbering number 4, it's tree position number 4, again just showing overall site conditions and size of the tree. Vigor is good, structure is good. Again, maybe it's fair, it could be better structured, but overall for the species it's pretty typical. And the last tree in the row, just showing this, very similar conditions to the other trees as well. One thing to note is that if the department does eventually grant a tree removal permit, in our code it says we shall require that a street tree or trees of equivalent replacement value to the one removed be planted in the place of the removed tree, or impose an in lieu fee unless it makes written findings detailing the basis for waiving or modifying this requirement. In this particular case, if when you hear from the applicant, if the accessibility issue became a really compelling argument and approval of the trees was granted to be removed, essentially we require replacement value. So we would do an appraised landscape appraisal for the trees individually. The trees are relatively young, so I don't imagine that they are going to appraise much above the standard in lieu fee, which is $2,520. So in that sense, we're just here to try to protect existing trees. They're not mature yet, but they are established. It's taken us probably about 15 years to get them to be this size. So again, it's just our goal to retain trees, even if they're not the biggest trees in the world. They do provide benefits. We'll learn more from the applicant. I was hoping our inspector who reviewed the case would have included some of the plans from the applicant, because they have very detailed zone where there's a request for improved clearance. So we'll see if the applicant has something that they can share with that. And then for you as the hearing officer, we'll make sure that you have access to those files as well. So I do believe Joel Roos will be able to share that. So overall, what our staff recommendation is to see if we can work with these trees, to see if we can have them pruned and enough clearance established over the sidewalk for the accessible van to be able to deliver customers, clients. And as you'll hear from the applicant, it's about the van being able to access the curb and extending out over the sidewalk with a certain height requirement that these trees don't have right now, but will eventually achieve over time. So that's the primary reason for removal. Again, the applicant is being told they should get improved clearance. So that's how we netted out on this one with our staff recommendation to deny the request to remove the 3 trees. And we'll get into the additional details starting now. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is the applicant ready to give testimony?
Mr. Roos, did you need me to promote you to a panelist as well?
Yes, indeed. We've got
Okay.
a presentation that we'd like to post. Thank you.
Okay, so just a moment. I think you'll see a prompt and you accept it and then come over. And after you come over, you will need to unmute yourself again. We do see your presentation, but you will need to unmute yourself once again, please.
There we go. Good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Well, good morning, Officer Reitman and Mr. Buck. I'm Joel Roos. I'm representing a new non-for-profit group, A Home, which is the Artist Hub on Market. We're one of the principal developers of the site at 1687 Market at Goff, as Mr. Buck noted. Joining me today is Fiona Ruddy, our co-developer with Mercy Housing, and Katie Hawkins, the project architect at Mark Cavaniero Associates. And we really appreciate the opportunity to appeal staff's denial to remove the 3 trees on the site. And Chris, really appreciate your commentary this morning. As I believe, Chris, you know, each of our team members takes the preservation of street trees very seriously and have given strong consideration to retaining the 3 trees that we're considering today. However, given the conflicts that you noted with the current codes, we see no way to do so. So a little bit about the project, and then we'll jump into the request. So the project involves the development of 94 units of 100% affordable housing for artists, and within this new project will be a practice and performing space, including a small theater. And the intent of this project, or the mission of this project, is to provide affordable housing for artists who are being priced out of San Francisco. We're incredibly grateful to a philanthropist and soon to be numerous philanthropists who are making this project possible. As Chris noted, the 3 trees, street trees that we're considering today are bronze loquats, and there are a few conflicts that we'd like to discuss today. One, we'll take a look at a slide which shows that the existing building foundation or the future building foundation will likely disturb existing root system. We'll also discuss DPW's accessible loading zone clearance that Katie will present. We'll also discuss SFDPW's clearance over the sidewalk and street tree, which Chris noted. And we while we certainly can protect the street trees if they need to remain, we know that they will conflict with the staging for the development of the affordable housing. The first issue that we foresee, is that the existing building known as the McCroskey Building set back about 6 feet from the property line. Our new building and two levels of subterranean structure will be immediately adjacent to the property line. So in other words, we're pulling the building further to the east. And in so doing, we believe that existing root system will be in conflict with that zone in which we're now pulling the building. The main issue at hand here is what we see as a direct conflict with the accessible passenger loading, and I'd like Katie
30 seconds.
Katie Hawkins to walk us through that, and we'll go from there. So Katie, please take it from there. Sounds like she has to be unmuted as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. Yes, thank you, Joel, and thank you everyone for the hearing today. I'm Katie Hawkins with Mark Kevin Euro Associates, and we just provided some diagrams from the DPW requirements for sidewalks and streets at street trees. And here in particular is the DPW accessible passenger loading diagram, which indicates that over the accessible passenger loading space, a clear height of 114 inches is required at the sidewalk, which the trees are currently not providing. And if they're trimmed or limbed to provide that clearance, the arborist report noted that the trees would be really negatively impacted and probably, lose their integrity as a result of the trimming. In addition, there is the requirement as well on slide 6 that Chris had previously noted about the clearance requirement over the street and sidewalk. DPW requires the 8 feet clear over a sidewalk and 14 feet clear over a roadway, which the trees are currently not providing and would really require very significant trimming in order to achieve. So between the kind of extreme trimming that would be needed to meet the DPW required clearances at the street and sidewalk, as well as the issue that Joel noted with our building wall actually being closer to the trees in the new construction, we're really concerned about the health and longevity of these trees over time. And we think it makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons to replace them with trees that can be trained to grow vertically and grow taller over time as well.
Great. And Chris, you did provide the slide of the replacement trees. So what we're proposing is an additional tree. It's a Brisbane box tree along Gough Street. So replacement of 3 trees plus 1 in the bulb out. We also plan on installing an additional London plane tree on Market Street. And so I'm just going through those slides quickly. So here's an image of the a photo montage of the Brisbane box and the additional London plane tree.
Joel, if I may, it wasn't one additional London plane. Those are all existing.
All
there
existing.
are 2
Okay.
in front of our property and then 1 in front of the immediately adjacent property.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I see.
Yep,
it. Thank you. Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And so our request.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
may
go
I
ahead.
interrupt just a moment? Mr. Reutman, how would you like them to proceed? Because I'm trying to do the timing for each speaker. Do you want them to proceed one person at a time and they get 3 minutes each? Or do you want me to stop the timer, or what would you like me to do?
Yeah, approximately how many more slides do you
We're-
anticipate?
We're pretty much done now. This is just the appeal request is to remove the 3 bronze loquats and replace them with 4 Brisbane box trees, and that's consistent with the Gough streetscape. And we feel that the species that we're proposing will be more successful in the location. They will not impede, the loading zone as required by code, and will also be providing irrigation for the new trees. So that's our request, and we want to thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. I had one question. Early in the presentation, you mentioned the setback being 6 feet that would now be pulled closer to the street. And looking at those photos, it looks like the building wall is right at the sidewalk edge now.
Well, you can see here's the red line, the existing condition. So you can see that the building was placed at an angle, and the property line is right where my cursor is here. So the new building is being pulled to the east, so that the eastern face of the building is being pulled closer to the sidewalk. And the point is that the root system for these trees right here most likely migrated to the west. They took up that space, and with the new building and the placement of shoring for the two-story basement wall will likely interrupt the root system at these trees right here.
So right now where that concrete or block building face wall is, even though there's sidewalk in front of it, that's actually wider than the required sidewalk, and that's going to get narrower.
That's correct. This is private property where my cursor is here, and so the building is being pulled. The new building will be located within, obviously, the edge of the right-of-way right here, and is being pulled to the east. That's correct.
Got it. So, Chris, I'm not sure if that was conveyed to you earlier, but if essentially the width of the sidewalk is narrowing because it's using the full allowable property line for the new building face, does that encroach on the canopy of the trees that's currently, if the trees look like they're brushing against that wall, so we'd be cutting out 6 feet of that?
That's right. In particular, where it gets narrower behind where this photo was taken, this is showing the kind of the widest point. So that will have some impact. Now this tree on that screen that's currently up, well, that, I don't know if that's visible, but I guess one question I have for the applicant is if there's a basement location there at the moment, or if this would be like a new below grade excavation.
So Chris, there is an existing basement, but the basement aligns with the existing brick facade, and that facade is set back 6 feet at its widest point on the sort of the northern edge there from the property line. So what you see here is the sidewalk there's a segment of the sidewalk which is actually private, and it's not part of the public right of way. So the point here is, do you follow?
Yeah, exactly. So, I was just curious about that, but I think, bringing the wall out, that is kind of new. I think that is a new moving point for us. But I think the illustrations were very helpful. I want to thank the applicant for kind of creating those visuals of profile and front lateral view of like potential impacts of the canopies.
I have to say I took a tape measure out yesterday just to see where they were, and the canopies on the street side are about anywhere from 80 to 90 inches above the curb cut, and lo and behold, there was a Comcast truck there with a ladder on top, and the ladder was stuck into the canopy of the trees. Case in point.
Gotcha.
If you don't mind my getting into the weeds or the roots.
Sure.
You're gonna dig a 2-story basement that's currently at, within that 6 feet. So what, is there gonna be a major excavation in front that encroaches on the sidewalk in order to install whatever kind of shoring or pile system you're gonna use to excavate?
We use a fairly standard shoring system, which requires an MSE, minor encroachment permit with DPW, and that's standard protocol in the city. So you actually put the shoring beams within the public right of way. Our new foundation wall is then applied at the back side of that, and then we're required to cut the shoring beams off. I think it's 3 feet below grade. So the steel beams, after the foundation's in, we actually have to go in and cut the shoring beams off. So we will be applying for an MSC for three phases, which would be Market Street, Goff Street, and Stevenson.
So I guess my comment to Chris is, if we're looking at this photo or this diagram, if where the red line is on the bottom is the new face of the building, but they're going to actually be cutting potentially a foot or two even
Beyond
closer
that.
to the trees to put their shoring in. So that's going to obviously impact the root system pretty significantly of those trees.
Yeah, it's the trees are relatively young, so the root system, you know, it won't be structural roots that are holding the trees up, but it will be the young, fine absorbing roots. So it's the kind of thing that the decline wouldn't happen overnight, but it would be over time, you know, a couple of years, you'd see like a thinning of the canopy. I will say the species is susceptible to fire blight. So I do think there are very real construction impacts that start to add up here. With the footprint, the envelope of the building coming closer to the trees, and then the installment of the shoring beams, that starts to really put these three trees right in the center of construction activity that is going to start to be pretty challenging to have these three trees remain assets at the close of the project. I think that's something we will likely have to balance here, is how confident or comfortable are we that these three trees, even with the best of intentions and the best of tree protection, are they likely to be much of an asset, even with best management practices for tree protection? It starts to feel like that's going to be a little harder to say with confidence.
And then I'm seeing that there's a PG&E presumably vault that's also kind of sandwiched in between the two trees.
Yes, yeah, that's true. It's a very, very dense site, and the PG&E, you know, the sweeps of the PG&E vault are going to be challenging. But and Chris, I really appreciate you looking at the issues of the roots. I do think that the conflict with the code is fairly significant. We don't know of a workaround. As I said, if we could save them, we could, but we will be in conflict with the code. So I'm not sure how that settles with you in this. I think the whole issue is really cumulative. It's not only an issue with the roots, but I think it's the code issue that needs to be considered.
And I assume you've discussed with PG&E potential locations for the vault.
Yes, and and the vault will be on Goff Street, and it will potentially conflict.
Okay. I think I have a good picture of this. And is there anyone else that hasn't spoken that wants to speak to this case or protest or support the denial of the removal of these trees?
I see no other hands.
Okay. Great, thank you. I'll take a look at these plans in more detail. I have a copy I can get from the Bureau. And also if that arborist report that I think, let's see, I'm not sure, Joel, if it was you or Katie that mentioned the arborist report on those.
Yes, I think the arborist report's been provided to staff, and we're happy to upload this presentation as well, if that's helpful.
That'd be really helpful. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Chris, do we upload it to chat, or do we just send it to you via email?
Email is fine.
Okay,
Email,
great.
so yeah, urban forestry, maybe urban forestry permits at
Okay,
SF. Yep.
great, thank you.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you for sharing that and the explanation. think we can move to the last case. Hearing order number 211742 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 485 Duncan Street. Staff has denied the removals and the applicant has appealed. Chris, take the stage.
Thank you. And with some luck, I think we'll have the full screen visible.
Yes,
So
it's all ready to go.
great. So yeah, thank you everyone for your patience. We'll wrap this up by noon. So the next item is, as stated, the consideration of removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 485 Duncan Street. The trees are on the Noe Street frontage. The permit number is 794227. Staff denied the removals and the applicant has appealed. One correction I want to point out is this application went through a few different urban forestry inspectors on our team, and the original intent may have stated the removal of 3 trees, but in the process of review, we've been able to reduce that to the removal of 1 tree. But I just wanted to point that out. We'll explain that in the hearing during the presentation. So the subject tree, not removal of all 3, but the 1 tree that for sure the applicant is seeking the removal of is circled in red here. So we have 3 existing bay laurel trees adjacent to the property. And the tree circled in red is in conflict with the proposed new driveway curb cut location. The other 2 trees, tree 2 and 3, would remain. Here's a close-up of the new curb cut location that conflicts with the existing tree. We'll show photos of this. The next tree, sort of above in this image, and then the 3rd tree would remain. One note is that there'll be some impacts to the tree 2 that would remain closest to the driveway curb cut. We do believe it likely can withstand and be retained and be protected during construction. The goal is to protect tree 2 and 3 and really focus on the removal of tree 1. Here's a photo. The subject trees are on the left. So they're the larger trees on the left. So the 2 trees closest to the left of the image, these are bay laurels. And there are some overhead power lines that keep the height of the trees in check, as well as the wind, keeping the height of the trees in check. We did evaluate and conduct a landscape appraisal of tree 1, the larger tree on the right. And the appraised value of the tree is $12,600. Whenever a tree is removed and can't be replanted, the code directs us to assess the value of that tree. Now, sometimes through happenstance, you might have a tree, one of the smaller trees on the right, in which case the tree is not evaluated as being a value greater than a standard in lieu fee. But in this case, because the trunk diameter is pretty significant, the appraised landscape value for the loss of that tree is substantial at $12,600. Here's a look at that tree, tree number 1, that would be in conflict with the new driveway curb cut. Lower trunk is in good condition. It is causing sidewalk repair or damage, which you can see has been repaired already through this slicing or shaving process, which is an economical way for the city to address some sidewalk displacement without replacing entire slabs of concrete. So it has done some damage in that regard. The overall structure of the tree is good to fair, and just showing images of that main tree. The second tree, again, although proposed to remain, it is wedged. It's going to be wedged between a new driveway, and does have the minimum at least 5 feet clearance from that fire hydrant. So we have no issues with that tree in the middle remaining and being close to the fire hydrant. That's still fully accessible. But again, this is not being pursued for removal, may be impacted, but if the tree did not respond well to modest construction impacts, we would obviously revisit what needs to happen with that tree. Now, this tree we state is not replaceable because of the proximity to the fire hydrant. But again, just showing that these trees do have value. And the third tree does not need to be removed. It would be protected during construction. So just showing the overall trees. So with that, sorry, I just bounced out. So it's really a removal without replacement of one tree because we would lose that location of the tree due to the installation of a driveway. And our code directs us when a tree is removed without replacement to assess the loss of the value of the tree. In this case, that's $12,600. I do believe that both tree 2 and 3 can be protected during construction. And so just to reiterate, this is now the removal of one tree without replacement, not the removal of all 3. But that's concludes our staff presentation, and we'll likely have a applicant that may wish to speak to the application.
Chris, sorry, in that photo, the 2 big trees, it's the one on the right that's the subject for removal. And then what was the third tree? Is that in the picture as well?
It is. It was the third tree after a telephone pole.
Further to the left?
Yeah, exactly. I can go back to that.
But those are not being considered today.
That's correct, we believe. So the third tree is here to the right of the telephone pole.
Got it.
And tree 1 is here, tree 2 is here. So the subject tree for removal is on the far right, tree 2 in the middle, and then tree 3. So 2 and 3 would remain.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, if the applicant is present, please join.
Can I also be made a presenter so I can share my screen?
Sure, just one moment.
Thank you.
And now that you're coming over, you'll need to unmute yourself once again.
Thank you for that. Good morning, Mr. Hearing Officer. John Kevlin here with Ruben Junius and Rose on behalf of the project sponsors, Inbar Berman and Rick Tallman.
Good morning.
Good morning. The project proposes the demolition of an existing single-family home and garage located on the Duncan Street frontage of the property and proposes a new single building fronting Noe Street with 2 dwelling units. Inbar and Rick intend to live in the primary unit. The project reconfigures the site to make it more consistent with the planning code and, importantly here, more consistent with its neighboring development on Noe Street. So the primary frontage would now be moved to Noe Street rather than Duncan. The project increases the unit count on the property and provides 2 new family-sized dwelling units. Consistent with all of its neighbors on both sides of Noe Street, the project provides a single garage accessed via Noe Street. The garage has been designed to be the minimum width possible, just 10 feet wide. And as we all know, all agencies involved, DPW, planning, SFMTA, really require new projects to limit parking entrances and curb cuts to be as small as necessary to serve the off-street parking or, if in other cases, other uses. So in order to accommodate this modest garage opening, the project requires removal of 1 out of the really 4 trees. 1 is a little bit to the right on the neighbor's property, but we only need to remove 1 out of these 4 trees at the property. As you see here, it's number 3 and it's circled. I think we've already kind of discussed in detail the confusion around the 3 or 1 trees. We've worked with staff to be able to limit this. Only 1 tree is necessary for removal, as Mr. Buck said. There is a feeling that the other trees can be protected during construction, and they'll obviously be subject to the tree protection plan during construction to ensure that, and we'll continue working with staff on that. And so I'll just leave it at the project was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. The requested single tree removal is necessary for the project to be constructed, a project that adds 2 new family-sized dwelling units to the housing stock and makes the property more consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. Further, the single street tree removal is necessary for this property to enjoy the same benefit of off-street parking that virtually all other properties have in the vicinity. We've been working closely with Mr. Buck and other Buff staff. Mr. Buck may not have been involved in the process, but with his colleagues. And so we've been very much working with staff on this to make sure we construct this project in a way that's limited as possible impact on the street tree universe. And as such, we request that the DPW director overrule staff's initial determination and allow for this single street tree to be removed so this new family housing development may proceed. And I'm here if you have any questions, Mr. Hearing Officer.
Thank you for that overview. I do have a question for Chris. Given the planning approval for the construction, I mean, from what it appears, there's no practical way to get the garage / driveway curb cut installed without plowing through one of the trees. I don't know if you saw it any other way. Is there,
No,
does that have any impact on the evaluation?
I think at the departmental level, we typically will condition approval of the removal of a tree that conflicts with the driveway curb cut, just on eventual project approval, so that we don't end up with a tree that's removed in a project that doesn't come to fruition. That's clearly not the case here because planning has approved the project. So in that sense, I do know I should have reiterated, like at the staff level, we denied it because if a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, that's just what we do. If the tree was like that smaller one, tree 4 in their image, at the staff level, we'd have the flexibility of approving a smaller tree that we know could be replaced in kind. In this particular case, it's best for urban forestry staff to remain arborists and not judge the project in that way. But I do think at the departmental level, if the appraised value is being paid for the loss of the tree, I think the department, unless the tree were just incredibly unique and outstanding, where the department says, yeah, redesign a project around an existing street tree, only in those rare cases do we actually ultimately end up denying the removal of a tree that conflicts with the driveway. So the staff level decision was a denial, but if project receives all approvals and then the appraised value is paid, the department would typically approve the application for removal.
Thank you. Does the applicant understand the derivation of the appraised value of the tree? And have you discussed the willingness to accept that compromise?
Yes, we understand the code requirement. We do have the background on the calculation, so that is something that we understand.
Okay. Great. Are there any other folks in attendance that want to speak to this case?
I see no other hands.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think looks like that is the last order, so we made it by noon. Congratulations, everyone involved. Thank you for all the good testimony and clarifications today. I won't be issuing any determinations today. Instead, I'll make my recommendations to the director. And so, again, if there's additional documentation that you wanted to share, please email it to the urban forestry at sfdpw.org, and I'll make my recommendations to the director. With that, we'll close the hearing. Thank you for your time.